Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got brand new breaking polls to get to. In this update alone, I think there's three different pollsters reporting final polls. We have Rasmussen with final polls across the board on many key swing states. We're looking at this October 29th update. We've got Trump sitting +2 in Arizona. We've got Trump +6 in Georgia. We've got Harris +1 in Michigan. Harris plus only 3 in Minnesota. We have Trump sitting +2 in Nevada. Trump only down by 1. That's a Harris +1 in New Hampshire. A Rasmussen update here. New Mexico is Harris +5. North Carolina is Trump +3. Pennsylvania, Trump +2. You've got a Texas update of Trump +6. A Virginia update of Harris only +2. And then a Wisconsin update of Trump +3. So the big states there, Wisconsin, Trump +3. You've got a Michigan, Harris +1. And then you have the Pennsylvania, Trump +2. But you've also got New Hampshire, Harris +1. Virginia, Harris +2. So we're looking at potential other paths for Donald Trump should things go awry in the Rust Belt. And I don't think they will. I think Trump will at least get Pennsylvania. But I will be going through the map here in the second half of the video, talking about potentially hidden paths for Donald Trump that include a New Hampshire, that include a Virginia. You can see even Minnesota, at least according to this poll, is within the margin. Although Minnesota, we've seen a little bit more liberal polls there. Same thing with Virginia, to be fair, and even New Hampshire. But you get an update like this where you've got these states very close. I think New Mexico is pretty much gone. It's probably not going to happen, although who knows? I think that poll was done before Trump visited New Mexico on Halloween. Either way, that was his one and only rally there. We have Trafalgar and Insider Advantage combining to release their final poll. They've got Donald Trump sitting at 306. How about that? They do have Kamala Harris winning Nevada. It's extremely close by 0.2, but this is the exact same thing that happened in 2016 with Trump at 306 and the Democrat at 232. It would be Trump winning North Carolina by a little bit over 3, Georgia by 2.5, Arizona by 2.1. That tracks. I could see those three states going to Trump by the biggest margins. That would be North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. You've got Pennsylvania very close, Trump winning by 1. Wisconsin, Trump wins by 1. And Michigan, Trump wins by 0.6. You can see those are the updated poly market odds I talked about in my last video. Trump sitting +20 in terms of poly market. He's down from over the past few days where he was at 67%. He's down to 59%. That's what happens. It ebbs and flows. It is what it is. These are good numbers. Trump, if he gets 306, that would just be a Nevada loss if that ended up happening. But there is that prediction as well. This was the final state polls from Rasmussen. Again, we're looking at these interesting polls in a New Hampshire with a Harris +1. You're looking at a Minnesota Harris +3. Obviously, the swing states that you want. Arizona sitting good, Wisconsin plus. I mean, I don't think Trump's going to win Wisconsin by more than Arizona, but you're talking about, a marginal difference there either way. But that was the other final poll there. And then we also do have this very interesting update. New national poll, Muslim voters, Jill Stein sitting at 42%. So this is something that we're watching specifically when it comes to the swing state of Michigan. Now, back in 2016, when Jill Stein was on the ballot, she got around 1% of the vote. Trump barely won Michigan in 2016 by like 0.3. And we would surmise that a lot of people that potentially would have voted for Hillary decided to vote for Jill Stein. Now, it's not a perfect, thing when it comes to actually predicting potential Hillary voters if Jill Stein was not on the ballot. But Jill Stein is going to help Trump. And I also think RFK Jr., by the way, is on the ballot. So I think liberals are hoping that RFK Jr. will cancel out Jill Stein, but it's different with Muslim voters in Michigan. That's a rough numbers for Harris, especially if that holds true when it comes to Michigan. We'll have to see what ends up happening, but it is something to watch, and it's something that I've talked about in the past. That's why they wanted Jill Stein off the ballot, and they sued Jill Stein, and then Jill Stein came out against the Democrats and said that they were total hypocrites when they were talking about protecting democracy. They tried suing Jill Stein because they knew that Jill Stein was going to hurt her, specifically in a state like Michigan when it came to the Muslim vote. So very interesting stuff there. But I will be taking a look at the potential paths for Donald Trump. Let me just refocus this, try and get over here. Taking a look at some of the potential paths for Trump that potentially don't include any of the Rust Belt. So obviously Harris is at 226, Trump's at 219. You could definitely dispute right now. You could say, well, New Hampshire's a toss-up, Virginia's a toss-up. Maybe it gets down, maybe it doesn't. But let's just say for the sake of this argument, you do have Virginia going to Harris. Let's say Trump wins Nevada very narrowly. He wins Arizona. He wins Georgia. He wins North Carolina. It's the Sun Belt. These are states that we think Trump probably will win. You could definitely argue about Nevada. Liberals might argue about North Carolina, but these are states that are looking pretty good for Trump. It's Trump at 268, and this is what liberals want. They want Harris to very narrowly win, and this is where the entire argument from Harris comes, where she potentially loses the popular vote but wins the election by winning these 3 Rust Belt states by like 0.2. I don't think that's possible in terms of her losing the popular vote but winning the election. It would have to be a radical change in a lot of the liberal states swinging right, and I think they will, but not to that degree. But you do have Harris sitting at 266. That's because New Hampshire is not in anyone's category. Obviously, if she wins New Hampshire, she wins the election. But if Trump, looking at that Rasmussen poll being down 1, if he wins that state, it's over. He wins by 1 or 2. He loses the Rust Belt. He still wins. They would be very pissed if that happens. So that'd be Trump at 272. Obviously, Nevada also extends, your map to adding something like that. You lose New Hampshire, but you win Virginia, and you've got Trump sitting at 281. So there's some different things that could potentially happen. You could also get a split. It is possible. It's not likely. Normally, the Rust Belt does vote together, but we're talking about very slim margins, so it is possible. So in this scenario, Trump wins Pennsylvania. Harris would be looking at maybe getting a Nevada, but even in that case, Pennsylvania is just such an important state. Obviously, also, I'll give her Virginia in this scenario. Trump's at 281. That's with Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. I've seen a lot of Republicans predict a map like this where Trump gets to 281 with just solo Pennsylvania while losing the other 2 Rust Belts. And obviously also losing a Virginia, New Hampshire, but keeping North Carolina and Georgia. You've got Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Those are the golden 3. If Trump can get those 3, the election's over. It doesn't matter. Harris can win this Arizona right here. Trump's at 270. So that is the way Trump gets to 270 to 268. However, I just find it very, very hard to believe at this point, based on the polling, Trump would lose a state like Arizona. I think he's winning that 9 times out of 10. So if Trump wins Arizona, you win Georgia, you win North Carolina. This is why New Hampshire becomes so important, because if you're able to take a New Hampshire, obviously you would also need Nevada. And by the way, Nevada also becomes very key in that scenario as well, because if Harris does keep Nevada, which has been a liberal state since 2004, she would win with 272, even with Trump flipping a New Hampshire. So that's why you would love to just snipe Pennsylvania. If you win Pennsylvania, it's going to be so hard for her. It cuts off so many paths. You've also got people talking about maybe Maine at large. It's just 2 electoral votes. The 1 district for sure is going to Harris. The other district is very likely going to Trump. But you do have these 2 electoral votes in Maine that could cause some problems. We did see it was a poll. It was like a student election, but it's been very accurate in the past. I'm not saying it's going to be accurate again, but it had Trump up by 8. They got the exact margin in 2020 where Biden won the state at large by like 9 or whatever. So maybe there's a chance in Maine at large, because it's just a very lightly polled state. We don't know, but that could be another potential scenario where if Trump ends up winning that, you win in New Hampshire. For the sake of the argument, you lose Pennsylvania. You would still technically lose if you lose Nevada. That's why those 2 electoral votes, maybe they won't matter too much, but obviously this also sets up a scenario where, if you lose in New Hampshire, you still win because you get that Maine at large. The 2 electoral votes flip Trump to 270 from 268. That would be the Maine at large going to Trump, though, which is not projected right now. There's like an 80% chance, maybe even more, that Harris wins it, but it's very lightly pulled. Very lightly pulled. We don't really know. But there's obviously a lot of scenarios, but I'm just saying this is what we're looking at. Can Trump potentially find a hidden path should he have problems in the Rust Belt? If you win Pennsylvania, it's going to be so hard. It's going to shut everything off. Obviously, ideally, we get a very stress-free night and we get Trump winning all of these Rust Belt states and the election is over. I would imagine Harris would win this and you get something like this. And this is the 312 that I've been talking about for basically the last 2 months. And you maintain all of the swing states going to Trump. Wisconsin and Michigan would be very close. Maybe Michigan's within a half point. Maybe Nevada's within a point. But these other margins are over a point, like in Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Pennsylvania. And you get a nice little victory. And that's that. Bada bing, bada boom. The election's called at midnight. That's what we're looking for. But we'll see if it ends up happening like that. But either way, guys, that is just some different things. The updates that I've seen here recently. This is a good poll for sure. This is what I'll say. My takeaway: we're seeing a lot of liberal polls predict Harris will win the Rust Belt, and we're seeing a lot of conservative pollsters predict Trump will win the Rust Belt. There seems to be a split. I saw a YouGov poll come out that had Harris winning the Rust Belt, and so there's definitely the narrative that Harris is trending right now in specifically Michigan and Wisconsin. not so much Pennsylvania, but now you're going to start seeing, I think, more liberal polls come out and say he's winning Pennsylvania as well. But they're zeroing in on the Rust Belt. A lot of these liberal polls, they'll have Trump winning the Sun Belt states, but with Harris up in the Rust Belt. So we've got a divide right now with a lot of these pollsters. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, but I think you'd much rather be Trump in this scenario than Harris. And listen, if those Rasmussen polls are anywhere close to being accurate, you're talking about, states like, maybe even Minnesota being within the margin, but also Virginia. Trump's going to Virginia on Saturday. New Hampshire possibly, having a chance, which could be huge if Trump were to lose all of the Rust Belt states. There's just a lot of different things at play here when it comes to this election. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.